This is the third Tuesday of the month Waupaca City Council meeting.
Everyone, welcome to our second regular scheduled May meeting. Today is May 16th, 2017. It is 6:03 p.m. and I call this City Council meeting to order. And as always, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll get through some of the preliminaries here, but I have a plan on changing the agenda tonight, so bear with me, council members and staff and audience, as we try to set this up for tonight's meeting. But we'll start with the clerk's open meeting statement.
This meeting and all other meetings of the Common Council are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the press in accordance with Wisconsin state statutes, so the citizens may be aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting.
Thanks, Sandy. And would you also take roll for us?
Brian Smith.
Here.
Steve Hackett.
Here.
Lori Chestnut.
Here.
Paul Hagan.
Here.
Alan Keeland.
Here.
Scott Perchatsky.
Here.
Dave Peterson.
Here.
Paul Mayo.
Here.
Chuck Whitman.
Here.
Mary Fair. Eric Olson.
Here.
9 present. We have a quorum.
Next, we need to approve the agendas. The first one is the consent agenda. This is where all the items are put together, and we will make one motion and vote on that one motion unless council or staff would like to see any of these items removed from the consent agenda and moved to the regular agenda. And on the regular agenda, we would vote on those individually. Anybody like to see any changes to the consent agenda? If not, we need a motion to approve. So moved. Motion by Keelan, second by Hackett, that we approve the consent agenda as printed. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Under the regular agenda, a couple of things I need to ask you to agree to, if you're all right with that. First of all, under 9C, we have the Doc Addy's amended development agreement. I had talked to Jan today, and he has asked that we table this, and this will be brought back to a future meeting, so they were not prepared yet tonight for to discuss the amending of their development agreement. So that's tabled. I'm also asking that as soon as we get done with this discussion and approval of this regular agenda, that we move right into the city planning portion of the meeting tonight, and that would be starting with the we're going to start with, help me out, Sandy, I'm looking here.
9D.
Oh, yeah, it's under 9D. Thankfully, we have Sandy here. 9D, and this will be what I think the majority of you are here for tonight, and that's the discussion that the City Planning Commission had on residential housing on the first floor on Main Street. Discussion on that, and I will set the parameters as we go through that and set that up. And then after we do 9D, we're going to go back and do 9B, I'm sorry. 9C is tabled, but then we're going to go back and do 9B, which also has to do with the downtown part of it, most of it does, and that's dealing with the redevelopment project and the awarding of contracts and the city parking lot and the master plan for Rotary Riverview Park. So all of those things. So hopefully I keep it straight and Sandy keeps us straight here as we try to move around. And then we'll just go back to the beginning of the agenda and just work our way through that process. If that works for council members, you okay with that?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with your recommended changes.
Motion by Olson, second by Chestnut, or Keelan, I'm sorry. Keelan, that we approve the agenda with those changes. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Okay, so we're going to 9D, and I've asked Brennan to set this up. He is the staff individual that mans up the planning commission, and so I'd like to have him just discuss where we are right now. So Brennan. John? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This item is on page 186 of your packet this evening. My department has received a couple requests from a few business owners within the downtown area, looking at the option of the possibility of having some residential on the main floor of their building along Main Street. Typically, this is called a live-work type of housing, which is allowed within our zoning district B2, which is a central business district, in a scenario where you would have residential on the second floor with your main floor considered to be retail, commercial, office type of use. We have a few buildings within the downtown area that are single-story. Majority of our businesses within the area are 2 to 3 stories, but we have a few buildings within the downtown corridor on North Main Street that are only a single story. However, a single story on the Main Street level, however, they do have a couple floors below, as they do basically have a front or back along Cooper Street. The Plan Commission has discussed this the last couple months, in April, or in March and in April again, to give consideration for the possibility of having some residential on the main floor. Currently, that is not allowed within our zoning district or our zoning code. Again, typical live, work, or housing within the downtown is typically seen on a second floor scenario. But there's been a request that was presented to the Plan Commission to study this a little bit further and see whether or not there is an opportunity to maintain some residential potentially on the first floor. That would actually, at that point, would be in the rear of the property, but it would have a front towards Cooper Street, while maintaining the commercial, retail, office type of corridor along Main Street. The Plan Commission has made a recommendation to the Common Council this evening to take a look at this, or at least consider forming some form of a work group to study this. What was discussed at the Plan Commission was to kind of have and discussed furthermore with staff, is to kind of have an internal review team of myself and Henry, along with a couple of potential experts from the Plan Commission or outside, to take a look at this issue further. We would like to invite the individuals that did make the request to my department. Joe Udoni is one of them. He is the owner of the former Waypoint Financial Building on North Main Street, along with Rick and Tammy Wolter, who are here this evening, and I believe would like to make a brief presentation to the council. But we would definitely invite them throughout the kind of analysis process that we intend to do internally, looking at the buildings where this option to have residential on the first floor could be considered. And then it is intended right now to make some form of an option or a recommendation back to the Plan Commission in July to basically provide our analysis and possibly some options to consider a recommendation to the Plan Commission for possible ordinance changes, or whether or not we want to continue forward with the potential development of a formal ordinance. So I believe Rick and Tammy are here this evening. If there's any initial questions that the council has of me before they speak, certainly ask.
Eric and Alan, you guys are both sat on the City Plan Commission. I think Brennan has done a good job of summarizing what we had discussed at that meeting. Although 60 days seems like a long time, it's pretty aggressive for a municipality to try and get this done in that time frame, but we are very hopeful that we can bring this forward by the July City Planning Commission meeting and do that. I think the plan that has been set forth is a good plan. I think we're going to be able to explore many of the things that we need to explore here. And I think one of the big emphasis that I wanted to put out here, that this, although this is a zoning issue and a planning issue, it's all about economic development too here. And you know, if this is something that seems to work in our downtown area, it might be something that will help us to bring more businesses downtown and to propel the businesses to want to be in the downtown area too. So we're looking at it from a lot of different directions here, and we just, again, we got to make sure that it's right for the city and it's right for the people that are in the downtown area. And obviously the people that are here tonight, I'm guessing, are mostly in favor of that, but we need to make sure that we do our due diligence as we go through the whole process. So at this time, anybody have any questions of Brennan or the process? Rick and Tammy, you guys wanted to make a Tammy wanted to make a presentation. Okay.
You get me tonight.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, alderpersons, and all of you who have provided the most tremendous and overwhelming support that we couldn't have imagined. So thank you all. Thank you for the opportunity for Rick and I to share our hopes and dreams for this little slice of Waupaca that we were able to purchase. Rick, would you mind showing the photo? Just to refresh your memory in case you haven't seen 112 North Main lately. This is what it looks like today. It was the Reflections Hair Salon most recently. So there you go. Knowing that this is a full agenda tonight and that Brennan has shared a lot, hopefully you've seen the minutes also from last week's Plan Commission that were made available to you. And then please forgive me for reading this, but I tend to ramble and I need a script to stay on track. So who we are quickly. Rick is a successful entrepreneur, businessman, an excellent musician, creative thinker, and also happens to be my personal hero and biggest fan. I am an artist and a teacher of music and art for both adults and children. We are blessed parents and grandparents, and there's pictures available upon request later. In January, Rick and I found ourselves in need of climate-controlled storage and a home for my glass studio. Owning a vacation rental on Spencer Lake, we moved there and started looking for studio space because when it rents in the summer, we don't have access to our home most of the time. So we had a happy accident while we were wandering around Main Street in January. Looking for something to rent, we discovered 112 North Main for sale as a foreclosure. We purchased it for two reasons. It was affordable and it met every need that we had at that time. As it is now, with a little bit of plumbing, so we have a working toilet and running cold water, it has completely fulfilled our needs since we moved in February. As we considered the property, I spoke with Mr. Kane prior to actually purchasing to discuss a possible live-work situation, and he did make it clear at that time that current zoning only allowed residential on the second floor above main. When I pressed further, he explained a little bit. I said, is there any flexibility here? Is there anything we can do? And he said that there was a process, but then he also said that he didn't want me to waste my time because he would not give a favorable recommendation for my request. At that point, we decided to move ahead, knowing that our immediate needs for storage space and studio would be met. Mr. Kane also suggested at that time that we consider building a second story. We investigated that with a contractor, but it does have a new roof. It's only 3 years old. That was substantially costly for the prior owner. And the build-out also would be quite expensive, and we do have a budget. It seems a bit cost-prohibitive to go with that option. Then we discovered that our newly acquired building was historic. That was a surprise to us. Scott Christie came for a tour and supplied us with a wealth of information, including this photo. It was a 1912 possible grand opening of the Peterson Saloon. When I saw that photo, my wheels started turning in my head. Some years ago, my glass studio was set up in downtown Waukesha in an old automotive for sale sales place, and it was in a window just feet from the sidewalk. People would walk by. It wasn't open to the public. It was open on special nights. People would walk by, and then they'd turn around and walk back, and like, what did I just see? And they were able to watch, and it was a really fun thing. It was an asset to the community. So when I saw those windows and imagined the less than attractive brick that currently blocks in where windows should be, I started thinking it would be amazing to move my current glass studio, which is in what we affectionately refer to as the dungeon. It's on the lower third floor down. It has a really cute little hobbit door that's about my height, so Rick has issues with it. But the studio's down there, it's working great, but the dream was to come up and out of that basement into the front of a building with windows again, which was really it was really inspiring. So what I do, and Rick, if you wouldn't mind showing the other poster, and it's called lamp work or glass blowing. I work over an open flame with rods and tubes of glass, creating collectibles, jewelry. I'm a published artist. I've been picked up by a number of creators who use my pieces in their designs. So, thank you, Rick. As I said before, we purchased the building for storage and a working studio. It wasn't until we caught the vision of other artisans and business and building owners in the area that we considered restoring the building. To make a restoration possible, we would have to pay for this from personal funds, as there's something special about the buildings on that side and that part of Main Street. They're in a floodplain. For a financial institution to fund that, they would require expensive flood insurance to cover their risk, which is understandable, but we priced it out, and for our building it would be $4,000 to $6,000 annually. Other more obvious expenses would be regular insurance, about $2,000, property taxes, and of course the actual cost of the restoration. For us to be fiscally responsible, that's not a word I use very often, we either have to choose to purchase affordable living elsewhere, leaving the building looking just like it does today, or be allowed to create that work-live situation to allow our personal funding to go further. If we can live there, we can afford to do more. We don't have to live in downtown Waupaca at 112 North Main, but we'd really like to. Here are some specifics. We would like mixed zoning allowed on that first floor, approximately 750 square feet of working studio, glass boutique, retail space in the front, with about 1,200 square feet in the back for the residents. We've spoken with several contractors and architects and understand the need for a firewall between those two areas for safety as well as other issues. Other items would be egress. Given the square footage mentioned, egress is not an issue with either area given the sizes as I have described them. The 750 square feet of retail would include my glass setup right in the front window. A small boutique-style shop where my own glass, as well as that of other skilled artisans, could be purchased. I have many friends who are in the category of starving artists, and they would be happy to send me their work. Since I have a degree in music and have taught for the Milwaukee Public School System and private schools in Waukesha for over 15 years, the possibility of a small music studio is another consideration in the back of that space. On the Cooper Street side, we are so excited about the view. I know the deck looks awful back there. It's more sturdy than it looks. We sit back there and have lunch and love the view. We would like our living space on that first floor, which is the third floor in the back. Then there's the sandwich floor, which is the second one down. That could be a small studio apartment with windows just to the back, the deck, amazing views of the river, then the dungeon, the third floor down. Great dream for that would be if you had a garage-style door that could be thrown open in the summer. It could have interesting gallery space, glass demonstrations, fun lighting and music for people strolling around after dinner. We think the Cooper Street side of that whole side of the downtown has amazing potential with our building as well as all the other ones. We've met a few of our neighbors. They're wonderful, hardworking people. We've met Sally, Claire, and John. They live on several different levels back there, not necessarily on the first. So there is some living happening back there on other levels. So far, we have spent money exploring these possibilities, but need permission to create a residence at 112 before looking any further and spending more money on architectural drawings. We have a budget in mind, of course, and hope that the items listed can be accomplished within these boundaries, but we're going to have to look further to know that for sure. As previously mentioned, we'd be using personal funds in the hope that this all works out. We also are aware that in a couple summers the street's going to be closed that will impact foot traffic. We're also a bit concerned that funding for the big project has not quite been figured out or officially announced. And then down the road, this would be our building to sell, so it would be our risk. So we feel like the risk is ours and we're willing to take it on. Couple things from the pages of the RDG Waupaca Downtown Plan. Page 52. The city needs to be flexible with property owners of potential sites to amend codes, attract employment, create an attractive streetscape and provide further financial incentives when the project fits with the vision for downtown. We're hoping that ours does. Page 109. Incorporate allowances for work-live units in the downtown district where a building can have both a business and a dwelling on the same floor or within the same space. I'm close to finished. I hope I have expressed our thoughts well here to create a compelling discussion to convince the city of Waupaca to perhaps be more open-minded as they consider the various possibilities for buildings in the entire business district. I believe it's entirely possible to protect that precious retail space on Main Street while also allowing the rest of the building's part to be used in a creative manner. Our interest here extends far beyond the walls of 112 North Main, but to include the entire downtown area. Having owner-occupied residential, as well as responsible renters in higher-end units, will only serve to stabilize the downtown and further attract other business owners and investors. In conclusion, we view the city of Waupaca, the downtown fellow property and business owners, the arts and historic communities, and everyone who has expressed support for our efforts here as our partners. We have felt very welcomed by the community in so many wonderful ways. Truly overwhelmed, and thank you so much. And thank you for your time tonight. And thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Rick and Tammy, I guess I wasn't expecting what we got, but that was great. It was, it's what the Planning Commission had been discussing, and it's good to hear that. But really what I was looking for is, Brennan had made a recommendation of how we're going to move forward, and I was wondering what your thoughts are on that. And, you know, it hasn't really changed since we discussed this last Wednesday at the City Planning Commission meeting. And so you are understanding of the process, and did you have any questions on the process itself?
Do you? No, I believe we're clear. Thank you.
Okay. All right. This is a kind of a semi-ad hoc committee as I look at it. It's going to be a working group, and later in our meeting tonight, we're going to discuss some changes in how we handle economic development and stuff like that too, which will be one of the first tests of this group is this project here. But what I would be looking for, council, if you're okay with this, is just making a motion to approve the establishing of this working group so that we can move forward with looking at their request.
Make that into a motion.
Second.
We have a motion by Whitman, second by Chestnut, that we set up a working group to study the first floor residential housing in the downtown area. Any discussion from council members? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Thank you. Tammy, thank you for coming tonight. Presentation, Rick, Tammy. As always, we like to see our chairs filled. I'm sure you had to dust it off as you came in tonight, but yeah, appreciate that. Thank you. Let's go back then, Brennan, and this is you again to set this up. We're going to go back to 9B and C, or 9B, and there's a number of items under 9B. And the first one is dealing with awarding a contract for the downtown redevelopment project.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. My memo starts on page 149 of your packet. There's multiple projects and multiple contracts that are that we'll be discussing this evening, so I'd like to provide a brief overview to the entire council, and then Mayor, with your approval, we can kind of go through each project individually at that time. But as the council is aware, the city of Waupaca and the community has been working on a vision for the downtown areas for over 2 years now. Many of you remember that we worked with East Central Wisconsin Regional Plan Commission previously on kind of creating a vision plan. And then last year, the Common Council approved design contracts with RDG Planning and Design and SCH Engineering to prepare a downtown master plan and streetscape plan for the community, but also start working on design plans for the reconstruction of Main Street. We are pretty close to finishing that process. Everyone is aware, last month at the end of April, we did unveil the draft downtown plan to the community. We had multiple open houses. And we also had a workshop with the Common Council to discuss not only the downtown plan, but also the design contracts and a little bit more specifics, but also I think the long-term vision of all the different projects, how they work together, and how this was all going to be funded for the community. This evening we're presenting basically three different projects for consideration. The first project that we're looking at is Phase 2 of the Main Street redesign and landscape plan. This is a continuation of a contract basically with RDG Planning and Design and SCH Engineering. RDG Plan and Design was basically the prime contract for this first phase. They are the ones that produced the downtown plan, which will be coming forward here shortly to the Common Council for consideration and adoption. They'll be taking a secondary role on the next phase, as they are mainly going to be looking at the landscape plan piece of it, but SCH Engineering will be now the prime contract for this, and their role will be to lead us, the community, and the staff and the community through the process from basically 30% engineering plans to 100%. They have been very integral so far in working with RDG and the community and the staff on getting us to the point where we are with the proposed contract that has been submitted to the DOT for consideration for design exceptions. Unfortunately, we do not have a complete answer from the DOT as of yet. However, indications are strong that we will be receiving that hopefully within the next 30 days, and we can announce that to the Common Council shortly. But I credit both the team of RDG and SCH in getting us to the point where we are right now, and the positive feedback that we've received from the DOT as it relates to our design exception. We've heard it very loud and clear as we've gone through the planning process to try to maintain as much parking as we can along Main Street and the character of the angle parking, and that was our request that we submitted to the DOT. So we're hopeful on that right now. The second project that we are seeking approval for this evening is a recommendation that is coming out of the downtown plan and has been discussed for a considerable amount of time. As part of the project, when we did our design studio summer of last year, there were some concepts that were crafted by Marty with RDG to look at how to supplement some of the additional parking that may be lost on Main Street as part of the reconstruction of downtown. As many of you remember, we were looking at a multitude of parking options. We were looking at all parallel parking. We were looking at maintaining the existing angle parking. We were looking at a multitude of hybrid models where it would be angle and parallel. The preferred option that was submitted to the DOT for consideration maintain a majority of angle parking, but there were some areas due to realignment of the road and for the addition of some a little bit of wider sidewalks in some areas where parallel parking was recommended to the DOT for, again, not only for realignment of the road, but for pedestrian safety as well. In consideration of that, we were looking at where could we provide additional parking immediately within the downtown area for this project, and there was a concept that was crafted accepted by RDG to redesign the City Hall rear parking lot, in addition to utilizing East Fulton Street and Jefferson Street as kind of more of a glorified parking lot. We have since included East Union Street as well to really look at creating that town square or downtown feel for our community, being a little bit better steward to the street front and providing additional parking, not only for our customers now, but also the customers in the future. The City Hall redesign of the parking lot and reconstruction would potentially add anywhere from 30 to 40 to 45 new stalls within the immediate area of downtown. We are seeking this evening for design contract to be awarded with anticipated construction in 2018. We're seeking construction in 2018 due to the fact that we would like to get this in place prior to the reconstruction of Main Street. Give the opportunity for people to become accustomed with the additional parking. But we also have, the potential, although we are tentatively, as of right now, we're scheduled to be constructed in 2021, there is the possibility of being bumped back to 2020 if additional funding or alternative construction grants were out there to construct this project sooner. So that is our desire to design this year, bid it out, and construct it in 2018. The third project that we're seeking approval for this evening is in conjunction with the Park and Recreation Department. Throughout not only the visioning process with East Central Wisconsin, but also through the planning process we've worked with RDG, it has become very apparent that Rotary Riverview Park is an integral part in our community. The Waupaca River is an integral part, not only in our downtown, but also kind of the theme and destination place that we'd like to create within the community. And we see the synergy between the park and Main Street. We've heard a lot of discussions through the steering committee and through the public about reorientating some of our buildings back to the river. You heard just now we have a business owner that would like to actually utilize that kind of as their front and with a residential unit. So we are seeking approval to update the Rotary Riverview Park plan. The plan is over 10 years old, and because of all the extensive work that we've done thus far, we would like to get that plan prepared so that we can seek grants for improvements we would like to see in the park long term. One of those improvements that we're seeking, and I'm speaking on behalf of Aaron, is there's been a lot of discussion about a new pedestrian bridge connection. That is one of the grant items that we'd be looking at, along with other improvements that tie the two areas together and really creates that downtown destination. And then within the packet as well, we're also seeking approval to sign a grant administration and funding assistance with SEH this evening. That is a contract that is not to exceed $57,000. However, we are not funding for that right now. That is a time and material type of contract that we would be utilizing contingency funds out of the other three projects as we move forward. That is really to help the city apply for additional funding options for construction of Main Street or options to fund improvements within the downtown corridor or within Rotary Riverview Park. So again, that is a time and material type of contract that we're seeking approval for this evening. I've been pretty lengthy. I assume there's going to be some questions for me this evening. I do have Randy Sanford and Andrew Dane are here from SEH this evening. If there are any questions as regards to the engineering, Ryan Peterson, who will be the point person from RDG, could not be here this evening, but I believe we can answer those questions. He is available by phone if there are any immediate questions that cannot be answered by myself or SEH. So I guess with that, Mayor, I will open it up for comments.
Turn it back to me here quickly, and let's put some dollars to this too here, and understand how we're going to fund this, Kathy and Brennan. So let's go back to the first discussion that you had. This was on the Phase 2 Main Street redesign and landscape. So this is just to move forward from
Current,
the cloud to looking at what we're going to put on the ground.
Correct. Right now, where we sit, the downtown plan is going through the approval process, or the steering committee, getting comments, getting that back. So that piece of the plan is done. What we're seeking this evening is design contracts for landscape design with RDG, and then actual engineering design, basically taking the road project from 30% to where we're at right now to 100%, being able to bid that project out. The number that you see in here this evening, the $543,000, is not just for 2017. This project will be split over the next 3 years because of the DOT process that we're going to have to go through. So the funding is going to be split over basically all the way up until construction. So this is not a number that you're going to see this year. I believe this year's number is right around $100,000 within the capital plan that we are seeking for specifically this project for budgeting purposes this year.
Okay, and this amount that we're talking about for the phase 2, which is the basically 544,000, that's included in the amount that we were talking about last week. Is that correct? I'm sorry, what?
At the open house.
At the open house. So if you remember, that would be included in that dollar amount that we thought the total project was going to cost, approximately total cost. Now, we're not counting STP money or grants in there. This would just be the total cost, put it out. I think it was 5.3.
4.8 million is
Oh, 4.8?
is the recommended. I have, if you, for the
Oh, I'm
council's
sorry. Okay.
benefit, everyone that was at that workshop, we did have that graph that split out basically the 3 funding options that the city was looking at. And I have it available if you'd like, Mayor, to put it projected on the screen if there is a desire to do that. We, as a team, in recommendation, there's 3 funding levels: 4.3 million, which would be basically the basic road with minimal improvements to placemaking. There'd be some trees, some light poles. There was a 4.8 option that was provided that would include some customization of some of the benches and tree grates and some other placemaking aspects in the downtown. And then there was a $5.3 million option that was provided that it would basically be the additional artistic type of pieces, some of the monument signage or additional decorative lighting that would be seeking. Staff made a recommendation to the Common Council during that workshop to fund the $4.8 million project with the hopes that we can seek additional grant funding for the additional $500,000 for some of the artistic pieces, and or work with the community and hopefully find and fundraise for those projects. The benefit of having this project move to 2021 provides us that opportunity to really do kind of a capital campaign program as part of this project to seek additional funding for some of those placemaking and artistic elements that the steering committee and the community were looking at for this project.
Okay, so going back to this, then the 544,000 is included in that recommendation of the 4.8.
That is correct. The
Okay.
project that was presented, the total 4.8 includes everything. That includes all the design work that we're seeking here this evening, plus construction and everything else.
Okay, and then next, the parking lot, the engineering and the design is $102,000, and then, I can't remember, what was the estimated cost of building the parking lot?
The estimated parking lot construction is going to be at $520,000.
Okay, and those are not included in the $4.8 million.
That is correct.
Okay, and how are we handling, if we agree to do this, how are we going to handle that?
We would add again, the engineering design contract into the 2017 borrowing, and then borrow for the construction in 2018 or 2019.
Okay, so that would be from borrowed monies. Okay. And then the $75,000 for Rotary Riverview Park, that's additional monies also?
That is an additional project and would be funded through the capital borrow this year.
Okay, and that would be in 2017?
That would be in
borrow
2017,
also?
correct.
And that's all up for discussion, obviously, right?
Yes, I mean, our recommendation is, again, to proceed forward with all three of these projects. The synergy that these three bring together, and utilizing the same engineering firm and planning firm for all three projects minimizes some of the additional costs that we could see, because when they're in town talking about one project, they'll be here for all three. So there are cost savings by awarding all three contracts together.
Okay, and then the last thing that we talked about was for the agreement with SEH for the grant administration and funding, and you guys caught all that too, that if you notice in the three prior things that we just talked about, there were contingency funds set up in that, and then those contingency funds are what will fund this grant administration. So this is not new money.
No,
This would be money that's already in there.
Correct, and I just want to bring up the fact, when the city went through and initially hired RDG and SEH, we put one of the critical emphasis on the hiring of this team was their ability to work with the city for the grant administration for the block grant. There is a significant amount of work that has to go into, the paperwork and the bidding documents and everything else. So we wanted someone that was very familiar with that process and felt very comfortable with SEH, because they have been through that. They've done extensive work in the block grant and other funding scenarios. They've been pretty successful on other projects that they've worked on in the past, from securing grant funding and then also the execution and the paperwork that goes with it as well.
Okay, and I think it's important that we just touch on this too, Kathy, and I know you had this at the open house and so on, but Kathy did some projections on how we can feather in the cost of our two most important projects that we're planning, and the costly projects that we're planning in the next 5 years, and that is the Main Street project and also the Public Works facility that we are of need of, and then also not forgetting that we still have to continue to maintain what we currently have and improve what we currently have too. We don't want to forget about that either. And she was able to, I was not at that meeting, but that was actually 2 weeks ago, wasn't it? But I don't know if she showed you that graph where she showed that we could basically keep it level. Those were conservative numbers that she believes she gave us, and I appreciate that. I mean, that's what accountants do. We do believe that we still will see some cost savings to the taxpayers, even though we're looking at these two main projects. We just have a lot of debt that is falling off in the next few years, and that's really going to allow us to move forward with these projects. So we feel comfortable with the plan that Brennan and Kathy have put together for the financing and so on. At least from a financial standpoint, I feel comfortable with these numbers. Now, obviously, we can have discussion on the projects themselves, but they do fit within our budget. We're not. This isn't something that we don't think is attainable. We really think it's very attainable to be able to do this and still stay within our budgets. Okay. Brennan, anything else?
I don't specifically have anything else. Again, if there's any questions of me, otherwise we do have Randy Sanford and Andrew Dane here from SEH if there's any technical questions that need to be answered this evening as well.
Kathy, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you covered up my whole presentation.
Oh,
but-
sorry.
I did have to make very conservative. I mean, the numbers that I used were that we used the current equalized value of the city, which then allows for comparisons to other municipalities. And the fact is then we would look at it as 100% in the formula, whereas our assessed is at 103% currently to equalized. I wanted to get to someplace where it was 100% valuation, and that doesn't include when I looked at going forward for the outstanding debt and the the tax levy, no growth. Again, I'm not anticipating any growth in this and that. We'll be able to maintain the debt service tax levy that we have with minimal impact to the homeowners. The biggest thing is the dollar amounts not being firmed up for the Public Works building, but at least having that placeholder of 2.5 million out there, and that can always be adjusted. If we do have growth, we can look at prepaying debt that's existing, which I've been trying to get the council to do, and we have. We have prepayment of the Hendrickson Center of $500,000 1 year earlier, that instead of 2019, we're going to have that building paid off in 2018, which frees up about $500,000 in debt service levy, which is why we can afford to start paying for the engineering and design on the Main Street project. So I think by us doing that, refinancing of those issues last year, that has helped put us in a really good position to be able to afford these projects and not impact the homeowner, that this would be a burden, but it also allows us to maintain our 2017 to 21 capital projects with Lake Street, Evans Street possibly coming in, and some other streets, and still maintain what we have in our infrastructure besides Main Street. I think that's important to the residents, that we're not throwing all of the money to just one place, that it's still, we're going to maintain our infrastructure. And it looks good to if we do go out to the market for future bonds, that we are investing again in our infrastructure. So I think I'm very conservative, only because I know where we are financially, and I don't want to make any wild assumptions. So I thought that the $4.8 million package would be much more affordable and attainable. So
Let's just talk about the $4.8 million project and put it into numbers that I can grasp, and that hopefully you can grasp by looking at it this way too. So the total project cost is going to be $4.8 million for the Main Street, which includes doing the road, the sewer, and the water, and then also many of the design things that you've seen. Not all of them, obviously, because as Brennan had said, we're hoping that we can get grants and get participation from residents and businesses to participate in the remaining $500,000 of that. And we actually had our biggest business owner step up just in the last couple of days and say they want to do something in the downtown too. So we know that that's something that people are getting excited about. But let's go back to the 4.8. Okay, $4.8 million is what it's going to cost. We have STP money, which is federal grant money, in the amount of.
Currently, we have 1.7 towards the construction. With the moving back to 2021, we're hoping to secure some additional funding, which would bring it up to a total of 1.9 for that. That's the STP funding right now.
Okay, and then we also have some.
We are anticipating $500,000 from the Community Development Block Grant Program through the state of Wisconsin and the feds as well. And that's where SEH will help us on making that application and securing those funds. So that's $500,000. Currently, we are anticipating about $900,000 within utility funding. And that, again, is going for the sewer water. And then about $1.5 million currently for GO debt for the city.
So we're going to do a $4.8 million project. $900,000 is going to be going to be from our enterprise funds, which will be the sewer and water funds. So they will be paying for that, obviously, and they'll get paid back through user fees as you go forward with that, you know, the water and sewer rates. So in essence, we're doing a 4.8 project, and we're going to have to borrow $1.5 million of the general fund to be able to get that project done. Okay, so
As of right now, and again, I think one of the tasks that we've worked with SCH on and will continue to is to try to identify and find additional funding sources that we can continue to reduce that cost to the taxpayers down if applicable. But as it stands right now, if we were to bid this project tomorrow, it'd be about $1.5 million to the taxpayers.
okay, Randy, I don't know if you had your hand up or not, or did you want to say something ahead of time? If you could just hit the microphone. You're on TV tonight, so.
Great. Just real briefly, Randy Sanford with SEH, principal engineer, professional engineer. Andrew Dane is here with us tonight, and Andrew's also very skilled at looking and finding a grant that you're talking about tonight. One of the things I just wanted to bring up was we spent a considerable amount of time during the conceptual phase on this 30% design looking at hard costs of what you said, Mayor, is important to the project, which is what are we actually building for 4.8. There's a lot of infrastructure that is in need of repair, and Justin can attain to that. Nearly $4 million of that is roads, sewer, water, lighting at the bare bones kind of minimum cost. There are some amenities that are figured in for that 4.8, and then you've seen some of those photos. So our team's looked over the last 3 months and really has kind of honed in. Now that's the starting point to the budget always. Moving forward with this phase 2 of the project, myself and our design team working with city staff will really try to, we will maintain that budget for you, and we'll give you updates periodically to what that budget is based on some decisions that staff and the steering committee make during that whole process. Again, this process will take approximately 2.5 to 3 years to go through yet. So, and we're on phase 2 starting point. So, looking at grants moving forward in your packets, we did talk about a community development block grant opportunity. We're also looking at clean water fund opportunities for sanitary sewer and safe drinking water for the water mains. So, there's some other items of grant dollars that we're tracking as things move forward. Part of what Andrew will do over the next 3 years is give us updates on those. And if there are others that make more sense than what you see in front of you today, we wouldn't chase one that you see in front of you and maybe go in a different direction. So that's the time and materials that Brennan was talking about.
Great.
Mayor, I would like just to also follow up. The $4.8 million is actually 2021 numbers. We have, inflated those numbers by about 3% per year to take into consideration what the costs are today and because of inflation over the next couple of years. So we have factored that into for the 4.8 would be more in line with 2021 dollars right now.
Great. Council members, you have questions of Brennan, Randy, Kathy, comments you'd like to make? Go ahead, Paul.
Where would that 1.5 million be funded through?
Probably a state trust fund loan. However, depending on how our financials look in 19, we may go out to the market. With the amount of debt dropping off and showing some fiscal responsibility, we may have a better chance in the market. There's always pluses and minuses when we do that. We'll have to pay for a financial advisor, bond counsel, and other issuance costs, and whether or not that is more cost efficient to do it that way and go out to the market, or I just help you with the resolution and we do it cheap and just go to state trust fund loan. So depending on what the interest rates are at that time, we'll also make determination. But I'm hoping to be able to watch and monitor and to make this recommendation at that time.
Are we gonna be getting anywhere near our geo cap by doing?
Absolutely not.
Paul, if you remember, I think all the graphs that we showed you during that council workshop a couple weeks ago actually showed all our debt dropping down. So, I mean, I think that's a positive for the city perspective that we can feather these projects in, but the overall debt continues to drop for the city, which is great.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Laura.
I have one question. You mentioned that it's at least another 30 days you hope before everything gets back from the DOT. Why could this not wait until then? Could we table it till then and then move forward? Would that give you any more information that might be needed? Would it maybe give any more direction to maybe what the zoning is going to look at?
All the contracts that are in front of you this evening are going to be for our design specific, landscape plans and engineering. So moving forward, whatever the DOT provides to us for a final recommendation is going to be affected by the engineer and their landscape plan. It wouldn't be affected by anything else from the zoning perspective right now.
But it would be for the landscape and engineering. It could be affected.
Could be affected in the sense of, how wide the sidewalks are, or where, what type of trees or anything gets put in. But again, I think in working with SEH and RDG through this entire process with the DOT submittal, the application, again, not 100% approved, but I mean, there's a strong consideration that what was submitted is looking good right now.
Would it hurt, though, to hang on for that 30 days or till you get that back and maybe save a step?
Well, I mean, the other piece of what we're trying to do is getting some of these projects continuing down the process. It's going to take several months for the engineering for the City Hall parking lot and to try to make some bid timelines to get this done by the end of the year so we can get some really good prices. That's why we're seeking to start some of these projects now.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? Staff, any questions? Justin, this involves you obviously, and
I guess the utility side of it, that 900,000, that'll have to go out to borrow as well, our utilities, I imagine. That just can't come from cash reserves. Just a little extra tidbit to consider in the future. And I think maybe to answer your question a little bit, no matter what comes from the DOT, we have a pretty good idea of what we're going to do. A 2-lane road, parking on both sides and sidewalk. If that sidewalk has to change 8 to 14 feet or parking has to adjust a little bit, it really isn't going to adjust too much of the effort for those guys over there. And he's shaking his head yes. So that shouldn't really be affected. My concern, I guess, kind of coming forward was this is, we're putting a lot of focus on downtown, and I'm hoping that you guys have more discussion of, is this the direction we really want to go? We're putting a lot of money, a lot of effort, a lot of focus into 4 blocks. And if this is the direction that the city wants to go, we'll get you there. But I think that kind of needs to be hashed out a little bit. I mean, we do have a lot of other roadways, a lot of other infrastructure that we could be funding. However, I think there is a pretty good package put together here as far as the funding sources, the CBDG, Safe Drinking Clean Water, STP money is there. So it's looking pretty good, but I think it warrants some more discussion as far as that goes.
So then this could possibly have some effect on like the high streets and some of the really bad streets in town that are, Main Street even now just is, it doesn't appear very well to the people coming into town.
I guess that's more of a Kathy question.
Okay.
I mean, if we borrow less or more, obviously I think that affects the borrow of other projects, but that's more of her question.
I think for the constituents, it might be nice for them to know that, how they might be affected.
Kathy, do you have that graph?
Yeah, I do.
Can we put it up and show you? Is that possible?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
just bringing it up here, Mayor.
This might help, okay? Just so you can see what what Lori and Justin are both asking about, and I need to get up and stretch.
Lori, one of the silver linings, I guess, with the whole project being delayed is we advanced Evans Street now to be to 19. We're advancing Granite Street to be to 2020. So we are, you know, those streets have not been forgotten, and we're pushing them ahead, and we're getting them done. It works out really nice for Evans Street because that's going to be a detour route, 18. So it's going to be hopefully fixed the following year.
What about those businesses like on the alleyways that are going to be used during the construction? Because the alleyways are horrific.
We've had some discussion during the whole project of doing the alleys, and that's been kind of cut from the project due to the cost.
Laura, I mean, and, you know, and to answer that, I mean, we have to work with the DOT. This is going to be a DOT-led project, but, you know, SCH is definitely going to be working with the DOT, and then as we go through the actual construction to make sure that the business have the ability to get, you know, patrons into there. I mean, this is a big project. There's no doubt about that. We have not discussed staging of this project or how it would be constructed, whether it's going to be block by block or one lane or one side at a time or the other. Those issues, you know, we're still very early in that process, and we still have 2.5 years to discuss that. I think from a city perspective, and, you know, I know myself and Henry, we've been very vocal that, you know, we're going to be working with the business owners to make sure that they have, you know, abilities to get, you know, patrons into their business as well. The construction is going on. Yes, it's going to be a disruption. We all understand that, but, you know, we're going to put a toolbox of things together to assist those business owners to help them as much as possible as we go through this construction. Again, I think the fortunate thing of, you know, having this project move to 2021 provides us that opportunity and ability to not only look at other programs that are out there, but potentially other grant programs to help those business owners get through this time. But clearly, I mean, SCH has worked on a multitude of these projects as well, and they can speak to, you know, probably some staging efforts of what has occurred in other communities. But we're very well aware of that concern of being able to get people within the downtown area and everything else, and into the stores.
Get that graph where we show putting it all together.
Which one
With
specific?
the tax,
With
too.
the tax levy.
Yeah,
Is it the last one? This one?
That's the one.
that's it right here.
Yep.
Kathy, do you want to, I can point if you want to explain.
Sure. If you look at the blue is the current debt. Well, why don't you give me the pointer? That'd be better. It's like the remote at home. All right. So here is our debt service levy that we have outstanding, and this is big drop here is the payment of the Hendrickson Center. Then this gray area is us funding the 2017-2021 capital improvement plan, which is Lake Street, Evans Street, buying a sweeper, some other equipment, plow trucks and everything else. And that fills up that portion of it.
That's the 5-year plan.
That's the 5-year plan as it stands right now.
Kathy, but to keep our road aids up, we're also putting a placeholder for future road work
Right.
in that capital, in the gray area.
Right. That gray area includes about $300,000 worth of roads each year.
Okay.
Because we've made,
And what did we spend last year? What did we average over the last?
with the equipment, we ended up just over $350,000
And we're proposing to spend in the next few years 300,000.
on other roads and
Just
equipment,
roads.
just for public works. At the end, and the other piece that does fit in for transportation aids is public safety. So purchasing the squad cars and for the police department also adds anything to that formula. What I'm trying to do is that the transportation aids from the state are based on 3-year and 6-year spend averages. So if we maintain our base roads on the same level as we did with Hillcrest and West Fulton, after not doing a year of no roads. Now I'm going to use that as the base to maintain our share of transportation aids. What'll happen is if when we start spending money on Main Street, that'll increase our spend in public works, and will hopefully, depending on the budgets, show us an increase in the average of spend, and maybe increase our transportation aids, and hopefully maybe make up the $40,000 that we lost for not doing projects. So I think that's one of the things that I've built in being very aggressive with this project, is to make sure that we maintain our regular streets and still doing about $300,000 worth of projects in roads and equipment for transportation aids purposes. So that's why this pretty much stays where it is for the funding of the capital improvements. And then this orange gold section is Main Street. And this is how much the levy portion is of Main Street. Now, this is based on, again, a 15-year note. We can go out a little bit more, but I would look at 15, or maybe have a look at a 20 with some call provisions, and this might smooth some of the numbers out. But until we get to 2019, my best guess is to just be aggressive and pay for this road in 15 years. The blue section is the City Hall parking lot, and that is on a 10-year payment. So in 10 years, that debt is gone. It's $600,000. You're talking about $60,000 a year in principal and interest. It's not that big of an impact, even though it shows on here. But the green one is where there's the lift. If you didn't do the public works garage, you'd see debt service drop. So at this point, we will have an increase, a slight increase in the tax levy, and this can always be compressed down based on assessed values, growth, and whatever, or any of these projects coming in lower than budget. That's in the 2017 to 21 capital plan. So I think as numbers get to be more firmer, because we're looking at stuff 3 years out, this is my best plan right now. It could change in 6 months. It could change in 2 years. But this is where I think we can afford for a $100,000 home. It's $358, and the 6-year average for debt service is $366. So about $11 a year on a $100,000 home.
And I had this discussion with Kathy yesterday too. She's tasked with getting this number lower than this number, so we're going to be looking at doing that and still maintaining this. So that's our goal to talk about in the near future here too. So I asked the same question, Justin, and I asked the same question that you did, Lori. Is this going to hurt our other projects that we anticipate? And this includes everything that's in our 5-year plan. Now, 5-year plans can change, no doubt, but it does include our 5-year plan. So in the next 5 years, we're not going to be hurt by trying to do this project.
Okay, well, I think it's just really important that all roads leading to Main Street are represent what they're trying to do on Main Street. I mean, if you're coming into a town and the roads are bad and stuff doesn't look as nice as it might be, that leaves an image too. And then it looks, and I think for the focus on the city people, that they don't have that idea. that it's just the main street and not the whole vision of the whole community and what it is.
Okay. Well noted.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, if you don't mind, we're going to try and do these 4 different motions, so let's go back to the first one. This would be, because their funding is going to come from different areas, that's why we want to do that. The first one will be on the Main Street reconstruction Phase 2, and this is an agreement between SEH, RDG, and then some contingency, and they're also for a total budget of $543,730.
I'd like to move that we award the contract for Main Street Reconstruction Phase 2 to SEH Engineering and RDG Planning and Design for the dollar amount that the mayor mentioned.
Second.
We have a motion by Mayo, second by Peterson, that we enter into an agreement with SEH and RDG for an amount not to exceed $543,730 to do the Phase 2 Main Street redesign and landscaping project. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Chuck Whitman,
Aye.
Alan Keeland,
Aye.
Paul Hagan,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Lori Chestnut,
I'm going to abstain. Thank you.
and Steve Hackett. 8 ayes, motion carried.
Next, and 1 abstention.
And 1 abstention, sorry.
Next, we have Paul, you're doing such a great job. We have City Hall parking lot improvements. This is also SEH and RDG for a budgeted amount of $101,750.
I would like to move that we award the contracts for City Hall parking improvements to SEH Engineering and RDG Planning and Design for the dollar amount that the mayor mentioned.
Second.
Motion by Mayo, second by Hagan, that we approve of the City Hall parking improvements plan by hiring SEH and RDG for a total budgeted amount of $101,750. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Steve Hackett,
Aye.
Paul Hagan,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Chuck Whitman,
Aye.
Lori Chestnut,
Aye.
Alan Keeland,
Aye.
and Eric Olson.
Aye.
9 ayes, motion carried.
Rotary Riverview Park, again, SEH and RDG for a total budget of $75,020.
Is it just RDG or?
It's both,
It's both.
SEH and RDG.
SEH has provided the engineering for that.
All right, sorry. Okay, I'd like to move that we award the contract for Rotary Riverview Park and Master Plan Update to SEH Engineering and RDG Planning and Design for the dollar amount that, you mentioned a dollar amount, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, dollar amount the mayor mentioned.
Motion by Mayo,
Second.
second by Keelan, that we approve of the Rotary Riverview Park Plan update by hiring SEH Engineering and RDG Planning and Design for a total budgeted amount of $75,020. Any discussion?
I have a
Yeah,
question.
go ahead.
This Riverview Park seems to be pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of really nice things down there. Where did the impetus come that we wanted to redesign this?
There was a lot of, as we went through the design studio and the visioning plan, think of it more not as just Rotary Riverview Park and park improvements, but it's also taking a look at the backs of the buildings. It's looking at making that pedestrian connection. There's I know that Aaron has spoken of making some additional improvements to make that more of a destination place for more activity to be programmed down there than what's the ability to do that now. We also have to take a look at some floodplain issues down there, but it doesn't just include Rotary Riverview Park. The scope of the work, if you actually look in the actual piece of it, includes the Riverview all the way down, or the river front basically all the way down to the rec center, and it also includes the addition of the DPW building that's just along the river. That is currently basically the sign shop. It also includes all of Rasmussen Park and also the front area right by Danes Hall, working with the building owners for the Danes Hall and possibly putting some form of a public plaza on the north end of Main Street. So it's not just the park plan, it's all those other pieces included within that as well.
Now, years ago, we actually had a redesign of that area done. I don't remember exactly when it was, but I remember actually seeing it where the roadway was being moved, and was there any, did anyone look at that?
Yeah, I mean,
So we didn't reinvent the wheel here?
we're definitely not reinventing the wheel. As you know, RDG has had all those files or has all those files, and again, these improvements would be to basically be similar or synergy to what the improvements and landscape improvements and the placemaking improvements that we're looking at for Main Street, and tying the two pieces together, looking at other options of how to integrate the ramp that goes down to the park more integral than what it is right now. So it's making additional enhancements than what is there currently, and tying the two together.
Mayor, refresh my memory. There was money available for this?
No, this is coming out of the borough also. This is coming out of the 2017 borough. Right. Yeah, I think that what you were talking about was the Main Street project,
Okay.
Paul,
I
before.
remember seeing it.
Yeah, and I haven't seen that in a while, but yeah,
It's definitely,
absolutely. It might save us a little bit of money here. You're right, too. Might not. Okay. Any other discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Alan Keeland,
Aye.
Lori Chestnut,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
Chuck Whitman,
Aye.
Steve Hackett,
Aye.
Paul Hagan,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
and Paul Mayo.
Aye.
9 ayes, motion carried.
Okay, and then the last one, this is the SEH, this is only SEH, engineering services for the grant administration and funding services. And remember, this is money that will hopefully come out of the contingencies, otherwise we won't be doing it, right?
Correct.
Without coming back,
Correct.
right? Okay.
I'd like to move that we award the contract for grant administration and funding assistance to SEH Engineering for an amount not to exceed $57,000.
Motion by Mayo, second by Olson, that we enter into an agreement with SEH Engineering for grant administration and funding assistance. Any discussion? Sandy, will call the roll?
Paul Hagan,
Aye.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Chuck Whitman,
Aye.
Steve Hackett,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Lori Chestnut,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
and Alan Keeland.
Aye.
9 ayes, motion carried.
All right, thank you, Brennan, Kathy, thank you. Thank you for coming tonight, you guys. Appreciate it, Randy and Andrew. Appreciate it.
Mayor, I would just like to say thank you to you and the rest of the Common Council for the continued support for this project moving forward, and look forward to continuing to work with the community and the Common Council to bring this vision alive long-term here. So thank you very, very much.
Awesome. We look forward to seeing where this goes, obviously. Yeah, since I've deviated so much already tonight on the agenda, I hope you agree with me, but let's go to 9A, if you're okay with that. We have a young lady that needs to get home and go to bed, so we're gonna, we have a request from the Waupaca Area Convention and Visitors Bureau for street closures. Mitch, you wanna help us out there? Just tell us who you are. And
Sure. I'm Mitch Swenson, the VP of Tourism at the Waupaca Area Chamber and the CVB. And so greetings from our organization, and we look forward to a great tourism season in the greater Waupaca area and great events to bring people to town. And so we have the two events coming up, Strawberry Fest, Friday and Saturday, June 16 and 17. We're looking at approval for closure of the block of Main Street from Fulton Street to Granite Street and the east northbound lane of Main Street between Union and Fulton on Saturday, and then the block of East Fulton Street from Main Street to Jefferson Street, and the City Hall Library parking lot would be needed Friday and Saturday. And then again on the 4th of July celebration, Tuesday, July 4th, we'll be having our parade on Main Street beginning at 10 a.m. Excuse me, and assistance would be requested from the Waupaca Police and Fire Departments and the Waupaca Street Department for parade route closure. The parade route will begin on Mill Street at Elm and North Division Streets, going south on Main Street, ending at Lake Street. And we would like permission to once again close Lakeside Parkway from High Street intersection to the Waupaca Recycling Center that evening for the fireworks display over Shadow Lake. The road will be closed to pedestrian traffic to leave a clear pathway for emergency vehicles, and we will work with the Waupaca County Sheriff's Department for reserve deputies to patrol that area.
All right, so you've heard the request, one for the Strawberry Fest, which, what number are we on now, Strawberry Fest? Does it say on here?
No, it's a bunch.
I should know that too.
Lori should know that too. She was one of the originators, right, of the Strawberry Fest. And then also the
89,
4th of July.
89, yeah, 89.
The 4th of July celebration. So we'd be looking for a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Hackett, second by Chestnut, that we approve the request coming from the Waupaca Area Convention and Visitors Bureau for street closures for the Strawberry Fest and also the 4th of July celebration. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll. Oh, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Every once in a while she has to step up and tell me who's in charge.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for your ongoing support of promoting Waupaca.
Thank you, Mitch. Have a great night. I think we're about to go back to the beginning, which is non-agenda items and announcements. And I think what we're going to do here is we're going to do the announcements and public input, and then we're going to take like about a 5-minute break, and then we're going to go into department announcements and reports, so we're all awake listening to what our department heads have to say to us tonight. Okay, so let's go with announcements. We have the National Public Works Week proclamation, and Justin, you're going to read that for us tonight?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So National Public Works Week is next week, May 21st through the 27th. And of course, we get all excited about it. We can hardly sleep at night. We wear reflective gear to bed and all that. So the proclamation, whereas public works services provided in our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, and whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as water, sewers, streets, and highways, public buildings, and solid waste collection, and whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depends on these facilities and services, and whereas the quality and effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, and construction, is vitally dependent upon the efforts and skill of public works officials, and whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff the Waupaca Public Works Department is materially influenced by the people's attitude and understanding of the importance of the work they perform. Now therefore, Brian Smith, Mayor of the City of Waupaca, Wisconsin, do hereby proclaim the week of May 21 through 27, 2017 as National Public Works Week in the City of Waupaca, Wisconsin, and call upon all citizens and civil organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works and to recognize the contributions which public works officials make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'd like to take a couple more minutes. Next week, because it is Public Works Week, we'll do our standard picnic. We're having that on Tuesday at Swan Park. We're taking it over from Park and Rec, and we're just going to, do what we want there. And, well, anyways, we're going to have a few brats and burgers and exchange a few stories. So feel welcome to join us. We're going to do the coloring contest has already been done.
Noon?
Yes, noon. Lunch.
Okay.
Coloring contest is done. I've gotten them back from the second graders at the WLC, so those will be graded and, we award prizes to the kids, and we're going to go visit them on Wednesday at 1:30 and show up with a few of some of our equipment, tell them what we do, get them excited, do that sort of thing, and give out some Dairy Queen gift cards. So. That's all I got. Oh, and one more thing. Last year, I did a big speech about public works, streets, and all that stuff, and asked for your support. And I just want to thank you. Over the past year, you have supported public works, and you will be, you should be in the future, because the streets, water, sewer, and all the equipment that we maintain is pretty expensive. So thank you again for your support.
Awesome. Thank you, Justin. Next, we have one more proclamation. This is Creative Economy Week proclamation. It comes in handy here tonight, and I've asked Henry to read that for us tonight.
Mayor, before I read it, if I could have like a couple seconds or a minute to kind of put some context on this. In March of 2016, Brennan and I and others in the Community Arts Board and other arts groups coordinated and put together an art summit. Out of that, some really good activities and work have happened, and this is very timely because at the end of the month we are working to put, very much like council did when you put together an economic development strategic plan, we're hoping to have a workable arts and creative economy culture type of plan for our community. It dovetails real nice in terms of updating our comp plan, and it's there's some support to our economic development goals in the city. This is a little bit longer than Justin's, so I'll get through it as quick as I can. Whereas the City of Waupaca recognizes that investment in creative economy development, creative placemaking, and civic engagement through the arts and creativity are important to the health and vibrancy of the community and its future. The city appreciates the creative economy development and community culture engagement are directly related to economic vitality, education for the 21st century, engaged residents, and community's vibrancy and success. The city celebrates many impressive creative economy activities, projects, and initiatives such as education programs at art centers, revitalization initiatives, and civic engagement projects happening in our community and communities across Wisconsin. City recognizes the investment in the creative economy is critical for not only our local economy but statewide success for these reasons. The arts mean business. According to Dun & Bradstreet, there are nearly 10,000 businesses in Wisconsin involved in the creation or distribution of arts that employ over 42,000 people, representing 3.2% of the state's businesses and 1.4% of its employees. The arts add to the economy. The U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis reports that the arts and culture sector is a nearly $700 billion industry providing 4.3% of the nation's GDP, a larger share of the economy than transportation and agriculture. In Wisconsin, the nonprofit arts industry generates $535 million in economic activity annually, supporting nearly 23,000 jobs and generating $64 million in state and local government revenue. The Arts Engage. Attendees at Wisconsin nonprofits arts events spend an average of $19 per person per event, beyond the cost of admission on items such as meals, parking, and babysitters. 9% of the 9.4 million nonprofit arts attendees come from outside of Wisconsin. Those 806,000 attendees spend nearly twice as much as residents, $33 versus $17. Valuable revenue for businesses and communities statewide. The arts drive tourism. Arts travelers are ideal tourists, staying longer and spending more to seek out authentic cultural experiences. The U.S. Department of Commerce reports that the percentage of international travelers, including museum visits on their trip, has grown steadily since 2003, 18% to 28%. The arts are an export industry. U.S. exports of arts goods, movies, paintings, jewelry grew to $75 billion in 2012, while imports were just $27 billion, a $47 billion arts trade surplus. The arts spark creativity and innovation. The Conference Board reports that creativity is among the top 5 applied skills sought by business leaders, with 72% saying creativity is of high importance when hiring. Their Ready to Innovate report concludes the arts, music, creative writing, drawing, dance provide skills sought by employers of the third. Nobel laureates in the sciences are 17 times more likely to be actively engaged in the arts than other scientists. The arts have social impact. Research shows that a high concentration of the arts in a community leads to higher civic engagement, more social cohesion, higher child welfare, lower crime and poverty rates. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, I, Mayor Brian Smith, declare the week of May 13th through the 20th, 2017 as Creative Economy Week to celebrate and promote the arts, creativity, and vitality in and for our community. Furthermore, I request the clerk send a copy of this resolution to our state legislators, to Governor Scott Walker, and to the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, dated May 16, 2017. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Henry. Again, I'm going to do a little bit of a deviation here. Hopefully I'm catching everybody that I know has something going tonight. Let's go to, I know we got to do public input yet, but let's go to 9E. And this is the request from the Waupaca Ale House to renew their permit for their wedding tent facility. Brennan, this is on, looks like you're the one that sent the memo on page
187.
187. You want to just really briefly summarize what's going on here?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. In the past, the Waupaca Ale House has come through originally through the Plan Commission and the Common Council to gain their temporary tent structure permit. I believe this was previously brought through here because of the concern about the noise and events that were going to be going on there. Over the last couple of requests that have come forward to the Common Council, the Common Council has approved it on a 2-year basis. The last approval that was granted in 2015, we worked with the applicant, Henry and myself worked with the Ale House to address some additional concerns regarding noise complaints that were coming from out there. In your packet, you see a previous agreement that they would continue to follow if moving forward for their approval. I did check with the police department, and last year there were no noise complaints out there. So I think having the preferred vendor list for their music choices has definitely helped in the complaints that we were seeing out there. In my memo, I've also identified typically temporary permits are usually issued by my department on a year-by-year basis. Again, we typically see this for seasonal type of activities like Shopko or Kmart or Fleet Farm. They have their seasonal temporary structure permits for their garden center. So as part of this request this evening, depending on which direction the Common Council would like to take, whether or not in the future you'd like to have this continue to come forward to the Common Council for consideration, or if my department can just issue that permit on a year-by-year basis. So it's, again, a request this evening to continue the temporary use permit or temporary tent permit, but also whether or not in the future, whether or not you want to see this move forward, or if my department can just issue the permit based upon all the other temporary ones that we do already. Again, following the guidelines that have been previously approved by the Common Council.
So tonight you're asking two questions here. First of all, you're asking for approval of to renew the permit.
Correct.
For 1 year or 2 years?
I believe that, typically they've done it on a 2-year basis. At least with what the Common Council has approved previously, it's been on a 2-year basis. So I would say for 2 years, yes.
Okay. And then your second request is, does this still need to come forward to City Council, or is this something that Brennan's department can handle? And I guess as long as Brennan knows that he should be in contact with the chief, both chiefs, to make sure that the guidelines are being followed and so on. I personally would be okay with it being approved by Brennan, by the community development in the future department. But I don't know what you guys think.
I think it'd be nice, you know, we had this little update about how this really goes out there, because there are people who complain, and it would just be nice to have that update every 2 years to see how it's going.
So you would prefer that it still comes back
Yeah.
here on a 2-year
It's
basis?
just a nice update.
Okay.
I would agree with Lori that given the history of this, it's not that big of a deal to come back through City Council, and I would like to hear in a couple of years that things are either going okay or not.
Well, I think
I'm sorry, Alan, go ahead.
I think we can get reports from Brennan on that basis, but I would like to see us push this stuff down to staff level as often as we can, rather than having it come to the full council.
Okay, sorry for Alan interrupting you.
That's okay. I hate to disagree with Paul, but I think that if Brennan's capable of doing this, if the chief comes up with some complaints, Brennan's gonna let us know, and we can handle it at that time. Otherwise, let him do it.
I agree.
Anybody else want to weigh in? Okay, so we're looking for, I'm sorry, go ahead, Eric.
I said I agree.
Okay. So we're looking for a two-part motion here. You can do it all in one here. We're approving this, if you're okay with it, we're approving it for another 2 years, and then after that, Brennan's office will handle it on a year-to-year basis.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Hackett, second by Keelan. Any further discussion? Okay with a voice vote? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried.
Mayor, I have no problem with my staff report in the future on a year-by-year basis to identify which ones have been approved. So I have no problem providing that information to the council.
Great. Awesome. Ryan, good luck this summer.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience that is on this agenda here that,
You pretty much cleared out the room, Mayor.
I'm, yeah.
There's-
You want to do what?
I want to talk during citizen speak.
Okay, that's next, right now. Are you sure it's not on, Anita, are you sure it's not on the agenda? We've had everything else on the agenda. No, I'm just kidding.
Pertains to things on the agenda.
Okay, I might shut you down, but we'll see how this goes. All right? Public input, this is for the audience to speak to us on non-agenda items. If you have anything that you would like to speak to us on a non-agenda item, please step up to the podium, give your name and address, and limit your discussion to 3 minutes or less.
And if you shut me down, I'll understand.
Okay.
Anita Olson. I'm talking as an owner of Embellishments on North Main. Embellishments has been there for 16 years. And so I've watched what has happened on North Main. I've seen the normal vacating and refilling of businesses. But what I have to say has to do both with the reconstruction of downtown and with Henry's comments tonight. I didn't know he was going to be talking. But I just want to talk about the stores that I have seen quickly come and go. And this is kind of down history lane. There was a bike store, Johnny's Salsa, Uptown Pizza, Dragon Wings, Book World, a fabric store, an upscale kitchen design store, a women's resale boutique store, designing interiors, David DeBoll's Gallery,
Edgewood Arts, Office Outfitters, Passport Travel, a tattoo shop. Those have all left. Some have been refilled with other businesses, but we have 9 empty stores on North Main. 44 North is for sale. And there's some longevity things. When you look at somebody with me with my white hair, you know I can't stay forever. Same thing with the pet store. He is retired. Waupaca Arts Center has many people my age. And Stratton's is an older owner. So we have those as possible stores that may vacate. So those are things that I know, and there are things that I've noticed. We're competing downtown with the big boxes. We're competing with the internet a lot. And so we need more businesses, and that's where I think art, culture, festivals, and specialty shops come in. So I hope you will look positively on those kinds of stores as they want to come here. We really have a great potential with retail and art and culture all working together. But if we wait to help the people coming, we may have this beautiful downtown and no stores along the way. And I'm really am concerned about that. So that's what I'd like to say, and thanks for letting me finish.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anita, for coming tonight. Anybody else that would like to give us public input? We have Dave Peterson.
I'd like to speak on behalf of one of my residents in my ward that says there's a big emphasis now on veterans, returning veterans, and veterans in agriculture. The state government, the federal government are trying to help vets. These people were wondering if we couldn't do something as a city to help our vets in the agricultural area. And what they came up with, just a question, was would it be possible to let a veteran who wants a spot on farmer's market or a craft spot on farmer's market have it without paying a fee? That's the question. And I don't know, I know Henry had something in the
Well, actually,
meeting pretty soon. So.
Yeah, actually, it's a timely topic. I think if you read my monthly report, you know, I met and a request is going to come forward, so we can plug that into their program. And
I don't even know what the fee is, but
yeah,
something to ponder anyway. Way of saying thanks and honoring the veterans.
Absolutely. I think it's a good place to start, though, Henry, with your group that, or the group that handles the farmers market. So, right. So they'll take a look at it, Dave. And anybody else? Public input.
Good evening. Thank you very much. My name is Michelle Drake. I'm owner with my husband Tim of Lucky Tree in downtown Waupaca. And I'll just try and be brief, but today I'm here as chair of Waupaca King and In Between. And if you haven't heard of that group, it is made up of different business owners in Waupaca. We put together a map every year that has over 80 businesses, some chambers, some not, and it gives visitors to our area an opportunity to see where everybody's located, including the King area and what we call In Between, which is kind of over by the grocery stores. And we put this together. The Waupaca King and In Between is basically put together in order to help support one another if somebody is needing help or has a question. And then we come together to not only put the map together, but we have 2 main events that we sponsor, one being the chalking chalk of the town that we do prior to Arts on the Square. And so you may have seen the kids the last couple of years chalking out in front of the library. And our other event is a new one this fall, which is a girlfriend getaway with the intent of bringing new folks to Waupaca for a weekend in September to enjoy our area. Many Waupaca King and In Between members have attended the planning meetings and have been involved working with the staff here of the city and also RDG. And we've helped gather 2 ideas for the upcoming street reconstruction. And we were very happy to hear from Ann Katz, who is the director of Arts Wisconsin, at the recent forum at the Danes Hall, excited to hear about the emphasis on Waupaca being an arts community. So today we had a lot of people here, as you saw, and many of those people were business owners. Some were citizens of Waupaca, and they were here to support not only the Walter project that was presented to you today, but also to show our interest in finding ways to bring business into Waupaca. We have, as a business owner downtown, it is a big concern of ours that there is a lot of empty space, as Anita mentioned. And so we feel it's important that we discuss ways of having some type of incentives for new business, whether it's tax breaks or special loans or being flexible with the zoning. You know, there's a lot of different ways, and we may not always be familiar with what those ways are. So we're hoping that we can work together with the city and the council and, you know, kind of explore what options we might have to make Waupaca as strong as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming tonight. Anybody else? Awesome. We're going to hit everybody in the crowd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John Skirms, E2391 Cardinal Court. My wife and I have lived here in Waupaca for the last 12 years. I'm a member of the Downtown Advisory Group that's been working on the downtown project. But to give you a frame of reference of who I am and what I do, my wife and I have owned businesses in downtowns, historic downtowns, for over 20 years. I'm a member of the Business Improvement District in Neenah. We own 4 commercial mixed-use properties in downtown Neenah. So that's sort of frame of reference for my 3 points I'd like to make. One, I'd like to commend this body for the vision to recognize the need for investment downtown beyond just sewer and water. So I commend you for that. I'm very encouraged and excited about the work that the department's done and RDG has done. So that's my first point. Thank you. Second, I'm a strong advocate for people living downtown. If you're going to have a vital, healthy, active downtown, you need to have people living downtown. And it's all socioeconomic groups. It's not just one group of people. In fact, my wife and I are pulling building plans in the next week or two for a 2-bedroom loft apartment in downtown Neenah. My third point is, if we have people willing to invest in our downtown, to take that risk, this body, its departments, our community needs to welcome them, encourage them, and support them. We can do all this wonderful streetscape, but unless we do those 3 things, as was mentioned earlier, we could have nobody down here and no businesses down here. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Anybody else? Thank you. For those of you that are over 60, you can take a 5-minute break here. We're going to be in recess for 5 minutes here. Okay, Kathy, if he asks you to repeat, you'll have to, but we're waiting for Alan, but we'll move forward here. Department announcements, reports. Let's start with Kathy.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members. My report starts on page 4. Just briefly, is that all of the state reports that we needed to file, including the new room tax report, were filed this month. And we will be continuing to get the audit presentation ready for the first meeting in June. There was a scheduling conflict with the auditors. They had a county audit that came up that they had to reschedule. So other than that, I don't have any other thing.
All right. Thank you, Kathy. Library, Peg.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. So we're really excited about an author visit that's going to happen tomorrow evening at 6:30. Andrew Watkins is coming. And it's interesting because it really stemmed from the Senior Book Club, which is located at the Senior Center. So they brought forward an author they wanted to have visit us and knew that she was going to be in the area. So we're really grateful to our Senior Center for helping us with that project. Baby Garden continues through the month of May, although a lot of our programs do kind of take a sabbatical so that we can get ready for the big summer library program. And we have a new online platform this year that people can choose. They can still use the card to track their number of minutes read, as well as using an online platform. They have to choose one or the other, but we had the greatest participation we've ever had last year, so we're looking to at least do as well as last year. We do have some really exciting things. You know, our mission includes creating opportunities for innovation. And one of the things that the teen department is going to be doing this year is using their 3D printer to make mechanical hands that can be used by people in other countries who don't have hands. And this sounds pretty fantastic, and it is, but you're just going to have to come to the library and see what's going on, because we're creating hands with our 3D printer, and then the kids are actually going to put the hands together, and we ship them off to somebody who needs hands. It's a fantastic program. The other part is that we're really grateful to Win TV for getting our story out about the robots that we have in our children's department. And there's a really great video on YouTube. If you go to Win TV's website, you can see that what's happening in Waupaca and see what's happening with our robots with the kids in the children's department. So we're all about innovation, and we really appreciate all of your support for those happenings at the library.
Awesome. Thanks, Peg. Brennan, planning, economic development, so on.
Thank you, Mayor. Council members, my report's on page 46 is for informational purposes only. We've covered most all of it tonight on other action items. I first want to just publicly thank Mike, Joe, and Jack Kohler for opening up their doors for the last month of activities that we've had at their facility. They've been gracious enough, as that is basically going to be starting to be soon a construction site, but they've opened up their doors to not only to the city but also to the community and continuing to gather ideas. So I publicly want to say thank you for hosting us for the arts and cultural kickoff meeting, along with the open houses that we did for Main Street. So very appreciative to that family for not only the project but also opening up their doors. Briefly, just working, Henry and I are working with the chamber right now in the King and In Between group for our new event for downtown. We're moving it to July 28th, tying a couple events together, but we're going to be basically doing a summer block party down at Rotary Riverview Park. More details to come here shortly with some street closure requests, but we are working through those. And if you're driving through the community, I just want to provide an update that last year the Common Council approved the propane facility along behind Presto. That project is going to be starting here shortly, so you're going to see some activity going on out there with the railroad. I know that they're doing some other work out there on some of the spur lines, but the propane facility that was approved last year is going to start construction here shortly and come online probably later this year. And aside from Doc Addy's, although the microbrewery project did withdraw their application on Churchill Street, we do continue to stay in communication and trying to locate a building for them in the community there. Desperately trying to find a place here and want to be here, so we are working on that. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Brennan. Justin, Public Works.
Thank you, Mayor. My report can be seen on page 47 and 48, and as usual, starting on the wastewater side, the cathodic protection project is well underway. As you approved a couple of those contracts during the last meeting, our crew, along with Wood Sewer, installed a bypass, or more appropriately, emergency bypass at Kiwanis Lift Station. So if the power goes out, we have a more appropriate way of handling that sewage without overflowing. And all the contracts with those contractors have been signed, and we're getting going on scheduling that work. We've had an issue with our SCADA system recently. We're experiencing communication issues, or just communication alarms, where basically the system or all of our pumps and equipment's working just fine. All it is just a communication issue where it's saying we're sending a signal saying everything's fine, while we're not receiving it on the home front. So we're looking at on top of Mount Tom water tower is a antenna. We're thinking that's the issue, and we're looking at what it would take to replace that right now. Our treatment plant's been approached by an individual at UW-Milwaukee, which wants to conduct an energy audit. It's free. It's basically a big study. It's done in cooperation with Focus on Energy and Department of Energy. So we're going to have a couple engineers from UWM come up and walk through our plant and see where we can improve and reduce our energy usage. Street side, the street or Lake Street contract is complete. Still trying to work on the scheduling with the contractor. Things are looking like it's going to be pushed back a little bit, but trying to marry that project together with the DNR funding for the service lines. And when I find out more, we develop more, I'll let you know. Our old backhoe was sold on Wisconsin Surplus for $16,600 or $16,600, excuse me, a touch more than we were expecting. The same for the mower, which sold for $3,200. Our street light inventory, long time working on that, and you may remember that at the very beginning we had a number of lights we just couldn't find. Well, we eventually found a majority of them, I think we couldn't find about 10 or 12 of them. Well, we found 6 to 7. And then we also found 2 that were on Habercorn Field, which is not our property anymore, so those are off our bill. And then there was 3 that, well, just were unexplained, so we're going to get refunded for those 3, backdating 6 years. And the Main Street patching, which I talked about last week, that work was scheduled for this week with some of the storms. It might be probably going to be pushed back to next week, but we'll get to it here shortly. Water side, just meters, testing, repairs, and change out. We're just putting a lot of effort into that, and that's the whole reason why we're moving forward to this beacon. And hopefully with the audit wrapping up here shortly in Kathy's office, we can get moving on that project with making our request to the PSC and moving forward with that. And still waiting on word back regarding the King Water study and our water quality samples that they took. Facility side, just a couple things. We received a small grant from American Transmission Company for $250 for purchasing trees. We bought a couple apple trees, and I believe they're putting in, what park was that? Swan Park. So putting that money to good use right away. And we had a little issue with our spur line. We had some repair that was needed. We resolved that with Canadian National and also the local business there, so that's been taken care of. That's it.
Thanks, Justin. Aaron.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. I'll be brief since I'll be taking up some of your time in just a little bit. My report's on page 21 of your packet. I just want to touch on a couple things. Father-daughter date night, our youth center staff did a fantastic job with a newer event. We had 41 people show up. We capped it at 40, and one father wanted to bring 2 daughters, so we weren't going to say no to that. So I commend them on a great job for that event. Truck quotes I want to talk about. This is one of our capital projects that was approved. This is a truck to replace the cemetery truck that we currently have. And we tried to go out for some quotes that were for used pickup trucks. We have found that we're only in reality going to save a couple $1,000s as inventory wasn't great. And when we looked at warranties and everything, it just wasn't worth going used over new. So what we're going to do now is go out to a sealed bid process, because the used, even though it was a few $1,000s, the used truck was below the $25,000 threshold, and the new will likely be just above that. So you'll see that coming forward in the near future. And then I just want to touch base and say thank you to our volunteers. We had a River Ridge Trail work day. On May 6th, we had 20 volunteers show up. That was our best turnout in the last 5 years, I know. We had a gorgeous day, so I want to thank everyone for coming out to that. And then with it being Police Appreciation Week this week and Public Works next, want to say thank you to both of those departments as we work hand in hand so often, and really can extend that to every department here. Brennan's talked about some of our park projects today, and Peg talked about the senior center, and it really just goes to show And Josh, you're awesome too. And it just goes to show how good of a working relationship the departments have. So I know I appreciate that. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Aaron. Ryan, let's see what we got
Thank
here.
you, Mayor.
Chief.
I'll be more brief than Aaron. Yeah. My report is on page 28. One of the things I wanted to talk about tonight is, I'm not sure if everybody was aware, but back on April 29th, we had our drug collection program. And to my amaze, the people in the community, the amount of pills and medications that they brought in, we actually set a record for the state of 66,039 pounds. Our department, just on that day, collected 57.45 pounds. Previously, when we did that last fall, we only had 31.2 pounds of prescriptions that were collected. So I'm really impressed with how the community got together and brought everything in to try to help the problems that we're having with the opiates and everything. The other thing I just wanted to touch on is that Brian Gildevan was again elected to one-year term as chairperson, and Jim Schultz was elected to one-year term as secretary. Everything else that I have in the my report is all informational.
Awesome.
That's it.
Thank you, Chief. Josh, Geek World, let's go.
Currently working on distributing new computers and then redistributing some of the old ones that are still in good shape. Trying to follow up with AT&T regarding our long distance issue, and our contact there isn't getting back to me at all, so I'm not sure if he's still working there or not, or what the case is, as these mails are coming back as rejected and he's not returning calls. But we did have finally a first bill where our long distance rate was corrected. We did our electronics recycling on April 28th, where we had 41,000 pounds collected, and as comparison, a year ago we did 26,000 pounds. So that was a huge increase. With the Waupaca Online side of things, we just recently applied for a community foundation grant, kind of a joint effort with the schools to put in some public rural access points. And then we're having some early discussions with the county regarding getting more internet service out into rural areas, and that's something you'll hear about at our next meeting. So that's a project we're looking into and discussing right now. And on the community media side of things, we had our first in-studio band last month, the Desperados, for a new program that we're working on with the Community Arts Board and some volunteers, and that went well. And we've got our next band coming in tomorrow night for our monthly program.
Great. Thanks, Josh.
What's the name of that band?
The one tomorrow's the Hookup out of the Fox Valley.
Great. Henry.
My report's on page 49. I guess it's all informational. I don't know if Alan wanted to mention anything about deer management, but the committee has met. I don't know what we're going to call it. The implementation committee.
Well, we're still ad hoc, implementation.
Yeah, I don't, but I don't know if you wanted to take
it was a
some of my
productive
time.
meeting. We had several people volunteer to take on the tasks that we had outlined to get the program up and running. So we're going to meet again on June 5th, I believe it is, Monday, and have a report out at that time. So I think we're making good progress.
The last thing I'd like to mention, and I'm going to embarrass a department head, because this came in after my report was filed and the packets were uploaded. But I got a letter from the Executive Secretary of the Municipal Treasurers Association of Wisconsin. Dear Administrator Veliker, the Municipal Treasurers Association of Wisconsin is proud to announce that Kathy Kaza, 3 designations, which I have no idea what those all are, but CMTW, CPFO, and WCMC has completed the necessary requirements to renew the designation of Certified Municipal Treasurer of Wisconsin for a second time. In an organization of over 500 members, 71 currently have the designation, but only 10 of them are eligible and have met both the educational and work experience criteria in order to be recertified. It must be renewed every 5 years by attending continuing education classes and maintaining proficiency in their area of fiduciary responsibility. The Municipal Treasurers Association of Wisconsin applauds Kathy on this achievement. I would too. I think it's great that you're making all that extra effort to improve your knowledge and your skill set. So thank you.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, Henry. I have to tell you, council members, last Thursday,
Mayor, we have, excuse me, we have one more item.
Okay.
The
Hold on, Henry, I know what I'm doing here, okay? All right, I'll just move on. Okay, let's go to the termination of the hangar space agreement, hangar number 3.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. Paul, you want to handle that?
Sure. Brian Long terminated his hangar number 3 rental effective the end of April. Michael Long rented it as of the following day. Just requesting approval of that, please.
Oh, so we're just looking for approval of change in the owner's or rental agreement for this hangar.
Move to approve.
Motion by Keelan, second by Hackett, that we approve of this change. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Steve Hackett.
Aye.
Lori Chestnut.
Aye.
Eric Olson.
Aye.
Paul Hagan. Alan Keeland.
Aye.
Paul Mayo.
Aye.
Dave Peterson.
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky.
Aye.
And Chuck Whitman.
Aye.
9 ayes, motion carried.
Paul Hagan, I didn't ask you before this meeting, but I'm not sure if this has gone in front of the airport board yet, but there is an individual out at the airport that is interested in putting up some hangars.
On our agenda for May 24th.
Okay.
So we'll be discussing it at that time, and I'll be happy to get back to the council at the next meeting.
Awesome. All right. Thank you for that. All right, let's move on to Aaron's presentation then. This is a presentation regarding a youth program recreation agreement, and it's called Fund 80. Aaron?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. All right. I just wanted to stand up in front of you guys today and talk about really what we've been working on here in our department or something we've been working on in our department for about 12 months now. And it started going back in speaking with the townships and looking for additional contributions as there wasn't any for about a decade. Through this process, we learned a little bit more about the youth program agreement. We found some concerns that we have as staff, and really I just want to talk about what we have as a solution, or what I have as a possible solution to this problem, or these problems. And I just want to give you an overview of what we have been talking about for a number of months now. You guys may have seen stuff in the paper, you may have seen things in my report, and I want everyone to have a good understanding of why we're having this conversation. So I'll take you through that here over the next few minutes. Why I'm here. I'm here to share the concerns that we have found with the youth program agreement and propose a solution. We won't get into details tonight, but eventually we will, to address the concerns that I have. There's a lot of challenges ahead, some challenges that we've already gone through, but wherever there's a challenge, I truly believe most of the time there's an opportunity, and that's certainly the case in this scenario. Just a little background or a little overview of what we do in our department. We are the main service provider for youth programs and really all programs for adults and seniors in our community. consistently have over 2,000 youth program participants in a year, 750 senior center members, and we're working towards that again this year. And then just numerous adult leagues, educational classes, recreation activities offered. What I want to touch on the youth programs more than anything in this, and that's mainly because that's what our agreement touches on with our 3 townships. Youth programs are a lot more than fun and games. Participation in out-of-school time programs can be associated with academic success and is associated with academic success, autonomy and identity development, learning conflict resolution, positive social relationships, mental health, civic engagement, and some pictures there from our department. And then just a couple points that are brought down from the National Recreation and Parks Association, which is our national association, which we belong to. Youth programs contribute to reducing juvenile delinquency, increasing positive and reducing negative behaviors, expose youth to less violence, improves children's educational performance, helps decrease health costs, increase economic contributions as they become adults, and helps youth development and self-confidence, optimism. These are the things that they'll tell you and that we have as resources through our not only our national but our state associations. But I can tell you, growing up in this community, being in youth programs, being in our Park and Rec Department's youth programs, and then eventually going on to high school, I can tell you that some of the mentors and the people that I've learned from most in some of those soft skills, accountability, dedication, learning how to deal with failure, I really truly hold those very, very dear, and I am very glad I grew up in a community where I had those opportunities to be involved in these things. I had a lot of coaches that I will say to this day are still some of the people I look up most to because of the character that I saw them handle themselves with every day. This is a slide that just shows basically the progression. So it has some stats with it, but the progression of not only does it benefit our youth, but those youth become adults. Those adults typically have kids, and the cycle starts all over again. And you can see in a red box there, I just put, currently we have a financial barrier that stands between some of these kids and the benefits that these programs provide within our Waupaca School District. And I'll get on to that. A history of prioritizing our youth programs. This community has a history of prioritizing youth programs, and actually, ironically, it's found right in the youth program agreement that I'm going to be talking about some concerns with today. In 1996, the leaders of this community got together and they formed this youth program agreement, which I'm sure most of you know is between Farmington, Dayton, the town of Waupaca, and obviously the city. At this time, this was a very innovative approach to funding recreation, and it put recreation at a top point, probably much more than other communities, which led to some of those things that I got to experience as I grew up. Contributions from the township help support some of the administrative and operational costs that support our youth programs, which in turn, those township residents become residents under our fee structure for parks and recreation programs. So talking about that fee structure, this is one of the things that we see as an issue, probably the major issue, or one of the major issues. Our partnering townships and our city residents have typical fees between $15 and $43 per program, depending on what we're running. Non-partnering townships, and those are all of those areas within our school district, as you can see there. They're currently paying an average of about $193 per program. That's a $155 administrative operational fee that's attached to their regular program fee, which we have found and heard from a number of people that a lot of people just can't afford that, or they might have 2 or 3 kids and they have to pick and choose who can be involved in what, or maybe they can only be involved in one program. And before I get onto this slide, I'll talk about why that is. The reason for those fees being as high as they are is because that our partners want to see financial benefit in their contributions. So for Farmington's, Dayton's, and Waupaca's contributions, you know, they have to see that financial benefit. And this is a fairly unique agreement, which is why you don't see those high non-resident costs in a lot of other communities, which we'll get to later too. This map is just a map of the school district in red, and the black areas are the townships that are within the agreement. The city lies within that black area. So you can see how many people or how much area is not currently within the agreement. Lind there is the biggest single township, which is to the southeast, and then parts of Scandinavia, Ogdensburg, and then you go west, Belmont, St. Lawrence, Lanark, and those places. Concerns as it stands today. Well, those prices that we just looked at, that's a large concern for us, for our community. We have a lot of people that have participated maybe at the $95 that it used to be, and as we went to get increased contributions, that jumped, and now they're saying, well, geez, we've participated for X amount of years, and now we have a really, really tough time doing it. We don't know if we can. That's a concern for us. Unstable sources of financial support. You know, board members and town board members change all the time, and certainly can have different views on a lot of things, and this agreement is no different. And there's 3 different agreements, which makes it also challenging. There's an existing barrier between the city and Waupaca School District partnerships, and what I mean by that, I'll give a brief example, is a couple of years ago, we created a partnership with the school district in the summer school program, where we offered swimming lessons as a summer school program. And what that did is it basically opened up a little bit of revenue for them for state aid. They can count those numbers through their summer school numbers and have them as full-time equivalent, which gets thrown into an equation. What it also did is it allowed them to reimburse us for our lifeguards' wages during that, so that was a win for our department. And it also lowered the cost for the kids, because once it's a summer school program, you can only charge for supplies. So it was kind of, it looked like a win-win-win-win across the board for everybody, especially because swimming is a life lesson that most people value as a very important thing to learn. Well, when we went back to the townships, we did get comments on, well, we don't want to count those kids, because one thing about the swimming lesson program was that we can't charge the non-resident fee in those areas that you saw were outside of the partnering areas, because now it's a summer school program, and those people in Lind could participate at the same levels as Farmington, Dayton, City of Waupaca for that one program. So, you know, those numbers were, some people didn't want to count them, which, you know, if we continue to move that way, we're really putting the youth program agreement at risk. So so we don't really want to create more of those partnerships at this point in our current structure. Inefficient use of staff time. I put this on here just because I think it probably does need to be realized that this is obviously a very important part of my job, communicating with the townships currently, but we don't have a staff of 5 to 8 to 10 full-time people. I would call myself more of a working supervisor, where I certainly have to help create the programs and work with our staff to provide the programs. So the hours of time that it takes in communication with our townships, in going back and forth with 3 of them, going to meetings, preparing for meetings, having multiple meetings with them, during the week to answer questions. Certainly don't mind doing any of that, but every hour that's not spent, or that is spent doing that, is hours that could be spent on providing for our city residents or those partnering residents as well. And then the last one, this is a concern, and the concern that stands today, and the city is still subsidizing, even when we go back and ask for additional contributions. We only have about 36% on average of our youth program participants, and that's why we're asking for some additional help to get the same fee structure for those partnering towns. And this is something that the city is subsidizing quite a bit, and we'll continue to look at. I just want to look at the non-resident rates. This is actually a meeting that we had through NewPro, which is our region. We're Region 5 of the Wisconsin Park and Recreation Association. We have meetings every month, except for the summer when everyone gets busy. And I wasn't able to make this meeting, but I asked the person who ran it this month to just, at the sign-in sheet, if people could write down what they charge for non-resident rates. And these are the people that were in attendance that answered that question. And you can see some of them are dollar amounts and some of them are percentage amounts past their original direct fee or resident fee. And you can see the highest one on there for dollar amounts is $15. A number of them have that. And then the highest one for percentage is 50%. Well, with the structure of our agreement, you can see Waupaca is quite a bit more than both of those, and it's $155, and then really anywhere from 360% to 1,000%, depending on what programs we're talking. Additional concerns, there's a possibility that there's always the possibility that this agreement gets broken or doesn't get agreed upon in any given year with one of those townships. And in my opinion, it's going to happen at some point. It might be 20 years, it might be 15 years, it could be 3 years, I don't know. But in the future, it's something that I would not be surprised if it did happen. And if that did happen, the loss of financial support to the city would decrease, which would mean a possible decrease in services, increased numbers of youth being unable to participate within our school district because of the higher costs. Another barrier that has been talked about is vouchers, and I think that's just another barrier to participation. Rather than agreeing to the amount maybe that the city is requesting, a township might say, well, we'll give a family a voucher. Well, what happens in that case is then, first of all, it has to get promoted. Parents have to go out and go to the city hall or however they run it to get the voucher. And I just think that the more barriers we put in place, the less kids that are able to participate, which is a negative. Lower numbers mean lesser quality youth programs for people in the city limits. So we have around 36% of our participation. If you only take 36% of all of our programs look a lot worse. Our programs are usually strong because we have good numbers. If you take anywhere from 40 to 60% and all of a sudden those kids are out of it, that certainly doesn't help for our city residents as far as the people that are participating in programs. So throughout this whole process, we've been, Henry, when I first started here, Henry set me up with a couple mentors from Fond du Lac and Sheboygan who worked under a Fund 80 scenario. And that's kind of where we got this idea of Fund 80. Looked into it, didn't know everything there was to it, but knew that there was some possibilities through Fund 80 through the school district. So I'll explain what Fund 80 is. It's called the Community Service Fund, and the things that this fund is meant to provide for is adult education. These all look familiar. They do to me. Community recreation programs, softball leagues, evening swimming pool operation, so on and so forth, youth programs, all of that stuff that we very, very closely work with and primarily provide, except it does it on a district level rather than individual municipalities. Some people that know we're having this conversation have asked the question or expressed concern, well, we don't want our monies being taken out of education, or we don't want less money going towards education to support athletics or programs. We don't think that's right. And I answer, well, they're not collected in the same fund. So those monies are completely separate. And if Fund 80 was enacted, it wouldn't have a negative impact on Fund 10, which is the educational fund within the school district. I just put a resource on there, Bruce Anderson. Anytime we're working through a proposal like this and learning about the possibilities within a community, we want to make sure that we have all the correct information. And I've emailed back and forth with Bruce a few times. He's a school finance consultant out of Madison for the Department of Public Instruction. Henry and I met Bruce in Stevens Point, asked all the questions just to ensure that we were heading down the right road with this Fund 80 being a possibility in this community. And Bruce said that it certainly was. So, what do we accomplish by utilizing Fund 80? Well, we address the issue of programming access to all residents because now everybody is contributing to some cost within the school district, meaning that we don't have people within the school district that are getting charged $155 more. Stabilize financial support from outside city limits. So we really turned 3 agreements into 1 agreement. And I would argue that the Park and Rec Department and the school district kind of have some shared values that may or may not exist with town boards, depending on the turnover in those boards. Every person in the school district now falls under the resident fee structure. That's one rule with Fund 80. Once you utilize Fund 80 and you open Fund 80, you can't discriminate by age, so you can't carve out the youth anymore. Basically, cradle to grave, seniors, adult recreation, a 1-year-old, whatever, they all are in the resident fee structure now. Opens the opportunity for expansion of more of those school district partnerships that I was talking about, whereas right now it would not make a lot of sense for us to enter into that as it puts too much at risk on the other end. Utilization of Fund 80 would replace the current youth program agreements. Likely that the partnering townships would then have the opportunity to lower their tax levy or provide additional services. That would be the decision from their boards. The school district residents currently not under would now be contributing and now would fall under the fee structure that our partners do. I'll just go through the differences here. The structural differences. 3 separate agreements. I mentioned that as far as the youth program agreement turning into 1 agreement. Contributions determined by a per capita equation. So right now it's by population, and that's how the final money contribution gets determined. Whereas in Fund 80, it would be a set levy amount that would then be just equally I guess there would be equal contributions throughout the school district because it's now an equalized value equation. Portions of the school district currently do not contribute. Everybody contributes in Fund 80, exclusive to youth in our current agreement, and it encompasses all ages in Fund 80. Non-resident youth program fees, you guys have already heard it, $200 about approximately per program, whereas everyone would be in that $15 to $43 range. Why it makes sense for those not currently participating. So those that currently don't contribute, like maybe Lind or some of those areas outside, some of their reasons for not being a part of the agreement is that they are maybe half split. Lind, for example, is about 50% in the land mass in the Waupaca School District and 50% in Waupaca. So what Fund 80 would do is, is it would effectively draw the line to those district users, so that you wouldn't be taxing the whole municipality of Lind towards Waupaca programs when, if maybe they wanted to go to Waupaca, they could do that. Youth adults and seniors would all benefit, as I've mentioned a few times, and they would decrease about $155 per youth program. When I say $155, that administrative fee, operational fee, the other thing about that is that every year that we get additional contributions from our partners, that goes up. So you know, whereas maybe it's $155 this year and $200 total. Next year it could be $225. The next year it could be $250, and it's only going to go in that direction. Summary of what can be accomplished. We have the opportunity to remove the monetary barriers, have all ages benefit, stabilize and increase the supplemental financial support to the city of Waupaca for these programs, as well as increase opportunity for the summer school partnerships, which, like I said, really was a win-win if it wasn't for our current structure. These are just some comments that we received, anonymous comments, over the past few months with the high fees, and I'll just let you take a look at some of the feedback we've been getting. And I can certainly share this with you if you're interested, this PowerPoint. Back to the map. What happens if there's no youth program agreement? If there's a break-in agreement, and what happens if there's no Fund 80? Let's say the town of Waupaca decides to get out of the agreement and maybe Farmington follows and all of a sudden Dayton follows, and then we've got some decisions to make. There could be possible cuts in services. There'd be cuts in or less supplemental financial support for these programs, and there would be more kids priced out of recreation, which are all concerns to us. Last thing I just want to say, kind of in conclusion here, is Fund 80 provides an opportunity to remove financial barriers, diminish chances of future problems that really could be devastating to the affordability and quality of recreation programming here in the Waupaca School District. So it would be a big change, and it's a big conversation, but it's something that I think is well worth having for not only our department but our whole community. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
We should be excited about this, although be tempered about it too, because we need to realize that this is a combination of working with obviously city council and the towns, but especially the school district. And you know, the school district has shown some interest in, as Aaron will tell you, in the Fund 80 program, but there have been no commitments at this time, and that's something that Aaron has been working on. I commend Aaron. This is something that he's being proactive in a recreation standpoint where we're not sure where the programs are going to go in the future, so we need to really look at all of our options in the future. And so I think this is a great idea, and I think this is something that's been well thought out, and we'll just have to see as Aaron moves forward, working with the school district and his park board to come up with a good plan to go forward. Aaron, if we were to go with the Fund 80 program, if all the moons aligned and so on, how long would we anticipate before we would see some rewards from that?
I don't even want to speculate. In some conversations with school district, we've heard some years, but I think, in my opinion, I would love to see it happen sooner than later. I'll just put it that way. But it could be 2 years, could be 3 years. It's kind of a school district decision probably for that.
Okay. Any questions or comments on that? Peg, go ahead.
I just wondered then, would the school district contract with our Park and Recreation department to provide those services? How would that work?
Yeah, I think that's something for when we get to the right point. I think it would be something that Kathy, obviously our finance director, and the business manager for the school district would certainly hash out. Council and school board would probably both have a say in that. But yeah, that's how I envision it happening. You know, an enterprise type fund could be created to make sure that those monies go for the exact purposes that Fund 80 is carved out for. That's how I envision it, but those details would have to be.
I guess the other question I have is that other communities that have Fund 80, what kind of a tax levy does that is there a burden then? What is the burden that it's placed on the taxpayers for that?
Fund 80s in different communities they vary a lot. So where one community might levy $200,000, another community might levy $11 million for their Fund 80. It depends on size of community, depends on what they're throwing in there for expenses. So it can vary.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks. Anybody else?
One question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Would the senior center then get a cut of that Fund 80 pie? It sounded like they would, or not?
Yeah, so it would be our department. We would have to determine what expenses would be paid for through that, should the school district want to cooperate and think that it's a good idea from their standpoint. So the senior center expenses out of our operational budget are eligible expenses for that. So they would have to be determined on which expenses go into that. But they could, yes. Yes.
I guess the only other question I have is, so right now we pay for our taxes for the Park and Recreation Department. Now, is the city then going to, the residents of the city will have to pay for Park and Rec and Fund 80? So we're going to be taxed twice for kind of the same services?
So Fund 80, it encompasses the entire school district, and when you're looking at equalized value, the city is about it's about 23% of that. So yes, they would be taxed on their school district bill for it, but the city wouldn't want to move in that direction unless it made financial sense for them as well. So it would have to reflect positively on the city taxpayer to move in this direction, which is something that we'll talk about in the future.
Well, it's suffice to say that Aaron works for the city, and he has the best interest of the city in mind as we move forward with this. So, I mean, although, I appreciate, and I've said this to him a lot and staff a lot too, is that when we get up, right or wrong, when we get up to a point where it gets to be where a parent has to decide whether their child can participate in an activity or not because of the price, we're doing something wrong, and we need to fix that. And I just use my example. I mean, I'm a family of 10 children, 10 hellion children, and if it wasn't for activities, yeah, exactly. My parents used John Hart a lot. No, I'm just kidding. It's something that we're aware of, and we want to make sure that everybody that wants to participate has the opportunity to do that, and that's really why we've kept our fees low to the townships even over the years. But again, we have to make sure that we keep the city's residents in mind here too, that it's fair for them. So, again, I think it's a good move in the right direction to at least discuss this. Okay, I know it's getting long, but I have another item I want to talk to you about tonight, but I wanted to just make you aware, though, we did make you aware at the City Planning Commission meeting, for those of you that were at that meeting, that normally meets on the second Tuesday of every month, which would have been June 13th. City Planning Commission meeting is being changed to June 6th for the month of June. And so, again, that's just for your information.
June 7th, Mayor.
Or June 7th, I'm sorry. It's a Wednesday, yeah. So it should have been 14th, and now it's the 7th. Okay. I was looking at Tuesday. All right. Okay. I've been thinking about this for quite a while, and I've tasked in discussion with Henry and Brennan how we can move forward with this. But we're making a move in how we're going to handle economic development in our city. And by that I mean we are going to go back to a team-based way of doing that, where we will have a team, and I'll tell you who the team members are, that will make decisions on economic development, but they'll also be responsible in going out and working with businesses to obtain economic development in our community. Now, this is not just economic development. It also includes some zoning and some planning too that will be on a team-based situation. But basically, just let me, and I appreciate Henry taking my thoughts and giving me a little summary here that I can give you this. But here are our goals that we're trying to do, or I'm trying to do with this and with the help of this team. By having a team concept, we're going to have better coordination and improve efficiency of decision making among all departments, because when we have economic development, it doesn't just include one department. It includes finance package. It includes the roads and the public works facilities. It includes administration as well as zoning and planning. So I think that's important that we look to get help from those that are better suited to give us the answers for that. It should improve response time for development request. We're going to be moving to a more proactive than a reaction on economic development. So people aren't knocking down the doors to come into the city of Waupaca, and we're going to try and bring them to us, okay? And so I'm not sure how we do that, but that's what this team is tasked in doing, in bringing that together. And the biggest thing that I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to improve the image of the city when it comes to economic development. That we have an open door policy. You have an idea for economic development in our community. We're going to make sure that we do everything we can to make it successful for you if it fits within our plan. So I think those are all positive things that we should expect and that we should do. And how are we going to do this? Well, the team members are going to include Henry, Brennan, Justin, and Kathy are the main 4 members of that. Scott Christie, who is the chairman of the Historical Commission, will be brought in when it has to do with historical type things. This committee will ask others to sit in. For example, if it has anything to do with IT type based things where they need expertise, they'll ask Josh. If it has anything that could affect police or whatever, they'll certainly ask Brian. Or even tonight, where we have an idea where people want to maybe use their buildings differently in the downtown area than they currently are, we will ask them to step in and just give us their idea on what they think is right there. So, and this is set up by staff members. I'm not asking a council member to sit on that or myself to sit on that. Some of the neat things that came out of the discussion with Henry and Brennan and that they have told me that they want to do is they want to set up 2 meeting times each week so that they can discuss this. And this there'll be 2 different 2-hour blocks during the week that the staff members will have set aside so that they do discuss just economic development in our community. And I think that's important that we continue that. And you know, if they have the time set up, they're going to make those meetings. And obviously there's vacations and other things that happen that don't make it perfect. Not all 4 members are probably going to be at the meeting if it doesn't have anything to do with roads or you know, anything that necessarily Justin needs to weigh in on. He might not have to attend that. I guess they came up with this term, for a better term of what this team is going to be called. It's the Development Review Team, so they're calling it the DRT team. And then just let me give you an idea of what my expectations are of the team members. First of all, Henry will be the lead for this committee. Brennan, his job is going to be to develop the calendar and the agenda for these meetings, handle pre-development agreements as he always has, handle putting together development term sheets, and so that's the main part of that. Obviously, Kathy will handle all the financial reviews of the project. Justin's responsible for public works and also to work with the outside engineering if we need that. And of course, as a member of city planning, Justin is able to weigh in on things that have happened at the planning level too. Just to give you an idea of what's going to change in Brennan's office, they will continue to take development requests and building permit types things. They're the lead for the planning and zoning. As long as there are requests for conforming, and again, I'll use this as an example tonight. If there was a request for zoning and it fits within our zoning code, Brennan's office will be okay with approving that. If not, if there's going to be some discussion on whether we should change that for economic development reasons or for even zoning reasons, that will go to this new committee and they will ultimately make that decision. So those kinds of decisions will not be made by one person, but a team effort to make sure that we get what's best for what's going on. It's important to understand that Henry's role in economic development is he will be the lead for the city of Waupaca. So in essence, as I've said, he is the face for economic development in our community. So he will be the one that people will be meeting with discussions on that. We're also going to make sure that Henry is proactive in getting out and seeing what businesses in our community want to see in our town and going to organizations and just letting them know what's going on as far as economic development is. And the other thing I think too is we've had some controversy in some zoning type issues, and that's really because we have an outdated zoning plan that we have in place here, and this committee is going to be tasked with updating this to make sure that it fits into what our goals are within our city. So again, we're putting a concerted effort to make sure that the buildings down on Main Street get filled, the buildings on Churchill Street get filled, the churning building gets filled, our vacant lots in our residential area get filled, our vacant land out in the industrial parks, TIF 8 and so on and so forth, are a very important main topic of what we discuss on a weekly basis. And again, I think the most important thing that we say is that we want people to know that Waupaca is open for business and we are willing to accommodate them, not at all prices, but if it makes sense for us as a whole, as a team, and as a council, then we want to move forward with it. Okay? Any questions, council members, of what I said? Do you understand what I'm trying to explain to you? Okay.
I think that'll be a good thing, maybe.
Good. Good.
That's a nice job. Job well done.
Thanks.
Very commendable idea.
Thank you. And again, I got to give Henry and Brennan both part of the credit for this too, because I had a plan and they came up with the detail of it too. So I think that's really important too. Okay. Any other questions on that? If you do, obviously, I have an open door, so, or an email, just give me a call or whatever the case might be.
Excuse me, one question to be the 2 hours times a month, you said, I don't remember how often they're going to meet. 2-hour meetings they were going to set up.
This is well, I'll tell you the days, it could change, I guess, but currently, they're looking at doing it 2 hours on Tuesday and 2 hours on Thursday.
4 hours a week. Doesn't that steal a little bit from Kathy's time to be doing what she seems like she's overworked already? I'm just questioning how you can squeeze that 2 hours, and not just her, but any one of the 4. If it works in their regular job description, fine, I have no trouble with it. I think that might be something you guys will have to work out.
Well, quite honestly, Dave, it isn't open to discussion. I feel one of the most important things that we do as a city are economic development and zoning and planning. And so we might find out in 2 months or 3 months or 6 months that you are right, but I don't think you are right now. So, yeah. Brennan, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I guess to follow up on that, just so the council's a better understanding, this is a process that, I actually stole basically from the Wisconsin DOT to provide a basically streamlined process to have everybody at the table at the same time. The DOT had implemented, this is years ago, if a developer had a project, if there was 5 or 10 people that had to touch that process, there would be a dedicated time per week, once per week, that you would be able to get on an agenda and actually have everybody at the table at the same time. So implementing this technique where we block out 2 hours of time twice a week. If there's no meeting or if there's nothing to discuss, we still do our day-to-day jobs and everything else. But what this provides is us the opportunity to not schedule another meeting within that time period. So if a developer does want to come in and can meet either on Tuesday or Thursday, we have the ability to do that. Everyone's at the table at the same time. Or if there is no developer, we as staff have the ability to sit down and talk collectively about projects that are going on. So it's twofold. It helps us from internal standpoint, but also from an external standpoint as we try to streamline the development process and get people through the process. So,
yeah, I guess if I could piggyback, I would think of it as a customer service kind of approach. That within 3 business days or 2 business days, effectively, we can get a developer or project in front of the key departments. Life is busy. It's so hard to get forced calendars together. So to have it set, I think it will I really think, create efficiency. I kind of look at this as sort of the next step of improving our processes and help the flow of communication between our departments. I think it can be really positive. We're going to have hiccups trying to implementing it. We'll smooth it out, but we'll work on getting it done.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the meeting tonight?
I did have a question, Mayor, on the working group that we talked about setting up.
Yeah.
When is that going to be, when are you going to make the assignments on that? When does that happen?
Which working group? The one for the
resident.
The residents?
Residents, right.
Okay. This group is tasked with coming up with a plan, and then from that, they are going to set up a working group, including key stakeholders and professionals that they need to bring in to do that. Are you interested?
I was just wondering. Okay. I want to make sure it didn't fall through the cracks.
No. They know that that's one of their very first tasks.
All right.
Is to come up with a working group and they might be able to do it just within this group that they have and just bring in individuals to get to the point where they'll be ready for the July city planning meeting. Right? Okay. We're looking for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second. Motion by Keelan, second by Hagan, that we adjourn till our next regular scheduled meeting, which is Tuesday, June 6, 2017, subject to call. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. We are adjourned at 9:02 p.m. Thanks, everybody, for attending and staying.